Every night we put the numbers of new infections in the state of California as well as the Coachella Valley. How many people are sick, how many have recovered, and sadly, how many people have lost their battle with COVID-19. So tonight we thought we would put a face on one of those infected people. Kathy Martin joins us now. Kathy, thank you for being here.
Hi, I'm glad to be here.
All right, let's start at the very beginning. Do you recall when you first started feeling, let's say, unwell?
Well, I was exposed to a patient. I work for a home health company, and I was exposed to a patient on the 24th. I didn't find out for a few days later until that patient had gone into the hospital, and I think we found out on like Thursday the 28th that he was tested positive for COVID.
Okay, so you know exactly where and when and how you contracted the disease.
I do.
Right. Does that help the doctors at all early on in your prognosis, knowing that you'd been directly exposed?
I think so. They had us do a test right away, and unfortunately, it wasn't long enough so that the test came back negative. So after the test, about 3 days later, I started developing symptoms.
And from your exposure to the time when you started experiencing symptoms, how long was that?
I would say about a week.
About a week, which is what they've been telling us, right? 3 to 14 days. So you're
Absolutely,
right there in the middle. Now, did it hit hard and fast, or was it like you just started feeling a little lousier every day?
It started light. It was getting like small fevers. I felt something was kind of off in my body. I didn't know what it was. I woke up one morning with back pain, and I thought I just am having a back flare-up. But as the day went on, that pain started moving up my back, and I was feeling it in my lungs when I was breathing, and then the temperature, the fever started spiking and getting higher like every day.
Right. I know that I felt crappy pretty much every day since 1983, so you knew this was different than that, right?
I definitely did.
Okay. Now, we've heard that they're getting good results with remdesivir if it's given early on in the process. Were you given any of these medications early on?
Yes, I was. I was actually really happy that I was able to get on the medication because it was in low supply. There was another treatment that was like a blood transfusion of somebody who had previously had COVID and had the antibodies. I was also on the wait list for that, but it turned out I was able to get on the remdesivir, and I had 5 dosages. Right,
and you feel like that may have made a big difference in how long you were down and how long you were hospitalized?
I think so. I think that probably cut my hospital stay by about 4 to 5 days.
Really? And how long were you in the hospital?
I was in for 9 days.
And you think it could have been much longer if not for the remdesivir?
I think so. I definitely think this shortened my stay.
Right. And what did the doctors say when they were talking to you throughout this process? Were they positive about your recovery, or were they concerned at any point?
Well, when I first went in, I was monitoring my oxygen because I have a pulse ox, and I knew that you could have a really bad flu, but it could also turn on you in a heartbeat. So I was monitoring my oxygen. I noticed I was starting to get into the lower 90s. And that night I was really sick and going back and forth to the bathroom. I started noticing that I was having shortness of breath. So I actually looked at my oxygen levels, and I had dropped to 82. And that's when I called 911. Right, because you're in the industry, so you know that the oxygenation is really a huge indicator that you're getting sick fast. I'm in yes, I was aware to monitor that, and I also knew a family from the East Coast that had gone through this, and it turned on her in a dime. She just became so sick just overnight. So I was preparing for it. This may seem like an odd question, but one of the things we were hearing early on, and I don't know if this is true medically or scientifically, but one of the things we heard was that ibuprofen can sometimes accelerate the disease or the virus if taken early on to relieve pain and fevers. Did you take anything like that? Actually, I was not aware of that until one of my coworkers mentioned it. And when I was spiking my fever, I was taking like Tylenol and ibuprofen together, like almost every 4 hours. And I was getting concerned that I was taking too much. And when she mentioned the ibuprofen, I actually stopped taking that. But my symptoms got worse because I didn't have that relief.
Sure. So again, this is one of those things. I don't know if there's any medical science behind it, but it was something we'd heard about. But it's interesting that you were double dosing to keep that temperature down. Do you know how high your temperature got? Like, what was the worst it got?
At home, the worst it got was over 103.
Oh,
but
man.
the first night in the hospital, it got to 104.3.
Wow. That's
It was really scary. I kept telling them something's wrong, and the next thing I know, I heard, oh, she's 104.3.
right. Yeah.
And it was probably one of the most miserable moments of my life. I remember they brought me into they had to get a CAT scan on my lungs to make sure they thought maybe I had blood clots. And I remember they started putting ice packs on my head and arms and legs, and they cranked the air condition up. And I remember just laying there feeling like it was the most miserable I'd ever been in my life.
Amazing. Now, tell me, did you feel a day when the fever broke or you had turned the corner? Was it a specific day, or has it just been a long, slow sort of recovery?
Well, I would say it was the third day. I was really struggling that first night I was there. My mind wanted to fight, but my body wasn't. And I felt my body giving up a lot of times. I kind of let myself go there thinking, I don't think I'm going to make it through the night. And what would actually turn things around for me in my head was my son. My son, Alex, who's 21, he's in New York. And I had just thoughts and pictures of him coming into my head. And I said, I have to fight for him.
That's wonderful. Do you mind telling us which hospital you were in?
I was at Eisenhower.
Right. And you felt like they were taking good care of you. They'd clearly done this numerous times before.
I thought from the moment I got there that I was in really good hands. The doctors were a little bit grim that first night, and I kind of felt myself going into a little bit of a depression. But I always felt like I was in good hands, and I felt like I trusted them.
Right.
And it's hard for me as a healthcare person because I'm the one that always is giving care, and it was hard for me to reverse those roles and become a patient.
Right. There's still a lot of naysayers out there. We saw it in Orange County over the past couple of days where they were fighting against the mandatory mask order. They still calling it a pandemic as if it's all a big hoax. What would you say to the people out there now that say it's not that bad, it's just a flu, or the whole thing's just made up anyways?
I would say that people are being a little too complacent with this. I'm a relatively young person with no underlying conditions. And if this can happen to me and turn the way it did, it can happen to anybody. I am all for opening the economy. I felt horrible for the small businesses that have struggled during this. And I just want people to be careful and cautious going forward.
The governor today passed a mandatory mask statewide order. You support that?
I do.
Right. As a healthcare professional, you wear a mask most every day anyway, aren't you?
Yes, I took every precaution and I still got it.
So you think you contracted it while wearing a mask and gloves?
Yeah, well, I didn't have gloves on, but I was wearing a mask. We used hand sanitizer, wash our hands, clean all of our equipment. So we did everything possible to prevent us, an outbreak or a spread, or for me being exposed to it. And it still happened.
Wow. Any idea how?
We take blood pressure. It's possible that something happened there. There was also a caregiver in the home, and I imagine he's been exposed to it. And he was talking to me a lot about the patient and what we were going to be doing going forward. So it's hard to know, but me and as well as one other nurse from our company was tested positive as well.
Wow. And so
with the same patient.
Right. As you look back at this now on the tail end, because you say that it's still a slow sort of recovery to full strength, but obviously feeling much better, which is wonderful. You felt like there was a moment you weren't sure you were going to make it?
There was the first night, yes. I actually, I lost my mom when I was in my early 20s, and a couple other people, my brother Martin and my son's tennis coach, Jackie Cooper. And it was weird. I was like talking to them in the room that night. Like I was saying, I think I'm going to be with you guys. And I wasn't having any kind of out of body experience. I never lost consciousness or anything, but I felt this sense of being near them. And then that's when I started thinking about my son, and I stopped going to that place.
Wow, that must have been terrifying. Well, we're glad you're feeling better. And just as a caution to everyone, boy, it can happen to anybody, even when you're taking precautions. So let's keep everybody safe, keep your masks on, and if nothing else, do it for Kathy Martin. Kathy, thank you for joining us tonight.
And I don't know if I can just mention one more thing.
Sure.
But the staff at Eisenhower in that COVID unit up on 4 East, they were the most wonderful people, and I feel like they're part of my family now. They took such good care of me, and I don't know how day after day they go in and out of rooms having to change into their gear and keep the positive, compassionate attitude that they have. And I credit them for saving my life.
Well, I'm sure they're going to appreciate that. We'll be sure they hear about your words. Kathy, thank you.
Okay, no problem. Glad to be able to talk to you.
All right, we're back after the break.